Hello, everyone. I'm so happy that you could join us today. We've got a few minutes to go before we get started here, but just wanted to pop in and say hello to all of my favorite coworkers and others who are joining us. As you come in, feel free to say hello to each other in the chat. There's also a questions tab where you can plug in your questions about engaging with your community virtually during these tricky times that we are in. And otherwise, I will be getting things started shortly after 12 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, everyone. All right, so it is 12 o'clock. I'm going to give it one more minute just as I see folks are starting to find their way into sessions. So want to make sure that they have an opportunity to choose where they would like to be. Folks want to use the chat and let me know how the weather is in your neck of the woods. I would love to hear it. Right now, I am 8 floors up in Waterloo and see some small little snowflakes floating by the window, but overall looks like a pretty reasonable winter day with a little bit of blue sky showing through. All right, so let me get us started here. Welcome, everyone. I am Annie Vanexem. I am the Senior Manager of Chapter Development and National Events at the Huntington Society of Canada. I've been with the organization since 2015. If you're not familiar with me, in my role, I support Megan Warwick, our volunteer coordinator, who will be leading today's presentation, Kelsey Laidlaw, our events coordinator, and our chapters and volunteers across Canada to achieve HSC's goals through fundraising, awareness, education, and support activities. Joining us virtually today is Megan Warwick. She is in a new position as our volunteer coordinator, where she's responsible for all things related to engaging volunteers across Canada. Megan wasn't able to be with us live today, but she has provided a wonderful pre-recorded presentation that you all are about to enjoy. Following her presentation, I will be here for a live Q&A, so be sure to enter any questions that you have in the questions tab on the right-hand side. Without further ado, here is Megan.
And I am here today to talk to you about virtual community engagement. So I am a new addition to the Huntington Society of Canada, and my role is the role of volunteer coordinator. So I am supporting the chapter development team with engaging with volunteers, recruiting volunteers, and talking a bit more about how we engage volunteers in our community. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to talk a bit more to our community about virtual community engagement. Now, it's been a really tough couple of years with the pandemic, and it's a great opportunity to chat more about strategies and tools to think about when pivoting from in-person connections to virtual engagement. So we're going to jump right in. So I thought it would be an excellent opportunity to introduce you to our chapter development team. So you can see here we have Annie, and Annie has been with the Huntington Society of Canada for quite some time. She is the Senior Manager of National Events and Chapter Development. So Annie's role is really about not only supporting Kelsey and I in our everyday work, but strategically thinking about chapters across Canada and how we can best support those chapters, engage with those chapters, as well as even develop new ones. And then we have Kelsey. So Kelsey is our community events coordinator. And Kelsey's job is to be supporting chapters as well as everyday volunteers in our community running events, whether that be a fundraising event, an educational opportunity. Kelsey is the person to chat to about all things event related. And myself, as previously mentioned, I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Huntington Society. And my role with the Society, again, is to be engaging with volunteers and working very closely with Annie and Kelsey, as our work is very much aligned every single day. So I'm not able to be at the conference, which I'm so sorry about, but I did want to take this chance to put a face to the name and really talk a bit more about what it is to be virtually engaging your community. Okay, so I'm going to give you a bit of an overview here with the agenda today. Just some key topic areas that we're going to dive a bit more into. So we have HSC focus areas. So I want to talk a bit more about specific community engagement areas when we're thinking about our chapters as well as volunteers who are wanting to support our mission. We're going to be talking also about benefits of building an online community, virtual tools, tips and tricks, and of course, we want to provide you with some resources. So as we move through today, I did want to mention ahead of time that although I can't be here at the conference itself, Annie is actually on the call, and she will be providing a live Q&A session after today's presentation. So feel free to jot some notes down as we move through the presentation. Any questions you have, Annie will be on the call to be able to support volunteers who are interested in learning a bit more about community engagement. Okay, so let's jump into it here. The impact of technology on community engagement. As I previously mentioned, it has been a couple of tough years and really engaging with the community. Technology has become a very powerful tool in our everyday lives, and it's really opened up doors and removed some of those barriers and boundaries for participation. So I really wanted to start to highlight throughout this that in-person connections, of course, can't be replaced. But however, when you're thinking about transitioning or pivoting to an online model, there is amazing tools and resources out there, and we wanted to take the time to talk a bit more about those things. So again, in-person may not always be available for everybody. So when we're thinking about a hybrid model for in-person and virtual, these are some great tools to be able to utilize. Okay. So as I mentioned, I wanted to highlight our key focus areas that we really like to speak to with our work at HSC. So with chapters specifically, as well as our community members, these are the 5 areas that we wanted to highlight. So we have fundraising, we have awareness, education, informal social support, and advocacy. So of course, most of these words are pretty self-explanatory, but we will dive into these things a bit more in talking about how can someone virtually engage under each of these focus areas. And of course, they're all interconnected. So oftentimes, if a volunteer or a body of people is running an event, for instance, they're probably going to touch on all of these 5 areas. We can use the example of an in-person walk. As you're doing the in-person walk, chances are you're probably doing some fundraising to support that walk, as well as raise awareness throughout the community when you're there. You're providing education when people are seeing you within that walk and asking questions, and probably having some resources available to participants, as well as it's a great opportunity for informal social support. Getting together with everybody and walking and really being there for the same cause. And of course, advocacy work is happening every single day. And we do want to highlight, if there is an interest in more advocacy work, please always feel free to reach out to our national office, specifically our chapter development team, and we can make sure that we connect you with the proper resources or the connections at our national office to be able to provide that support. Okay. Now we're going to go into benefits of building an online community. Now, I know most of you probably have had some experience in building an online community at this point, but I do want to highlight some key points that I was doing some research and really thinking about our everyday work at HSC, as well as the chapters across Canada. And these are some of the things that came to mind that I thought would be great to highlight. So the opportunity to reach a broader audience was the first point. So online engagement offers an alternative way to reach our community. Now, when you think about this, it could be someone's location may not be able to allow them to be there in person, or they may have other commitments where they're not able to be there. And they may be a little bit further away. So reaching that broader audience with an online platform allows you to engage a community that may not otherwise have been engaged. So that's one point that I really wanted to highlight. Number two is more accessible information. So when you think about what we are sharing with our community, that could be within a chapter, it could be within an event, could be our national office. Individuals that can access documentation, as well as any maybe video recordings of meetings, anything that may have happened in the community that they're not able to be there in person. Having a hub to be able to share that information really builds capacity within the community, and it's accessible to them to be able to review at their own leisure. Okay, inviting a larger range of perspectives. So we want to always be offering an outlet to those who are unable to attend in person. It could be as simple as a chat group. It could be that you're asking a live poll question to get some feedback from your community, really offering an opportunity for that range of perspectives, and maybe not the audience that necessarily is there in person, but also the audience that's really interested in your cause, and still being able to be engaged. And then number 4 is setting the stage for sustained participation. As we know, sometimes in-person doesn't always work for every single person. So having that opportunity for that sustained participation, maybe within a hybrid model of in-person as well as that virtual component, and using platforms that allow for that continuous participation. We'll dive in a bit more about what those things are, but I do want to mention that the things that come to mind are Zoom, Google platforms, really accessible things, and oftentimes we will be able to support the cost potentially of those things if a chapter is interested in using one of those platforms. And then we've got number 5, a reduction in cost. So of course, when we think about running a physical event or a meeting, you're thinking about the space that you're going to be in. So that could maybe a rental space, maybe a cost. Food and beverages in person might be a cost, as well as that cost of transportation that you're eliminating. And time, of course, it isn't necessarily a tangible cost, but time is of the essence. And if we're able to engage more people and keeping time in mind, that's also an amazing thing. Okay. So I want to highlight some virtual tools here and what resources are available to individuals who might really want to explore virtual ways of engaging their community. So we've got social media, and social media is things like Facebook, Instagram, and of course, not everybody's comfortable using all of these platforms, which is why we want to give some options here. But when we think about these platforms, you're able to utilize social media for different things around awareness. You could be creating contests. There could be group chats available to be some of that informal support. Really, social media is an amazing thing and has a very large reach. So even if those individuals maybe aren't living in your community, they're still able to engage with whatever it is that you may be putting out on social media. And of course, building education and awareness around HD as well. Then we've got video conferencing platforms. So this is really the opportunity to host virtual meetings. It could be a conference like today. We have a platform we're using, webinars, and as well as events. It's really important to think about how can we engage, but still have that face-to-face in-person opportunity. So when you're thinking about things like Zoom or Google Meet, it allows you to see the people that you're engaging in, get a read on their facial expressions, and it feels a little bit more welcoming than just maybe a phone call or potentially just a chat group. So bringing that in-person element to things, whether that be an event or a meeting, really goes the extra mile. And then, of course, fundraising pages. often what we are seeing in our volunteers and the amazing work that they're doing on the ground with fundraising is so crucial. And these fundraising pages are really helping to enhance that work. So reaching out to our chapter development team, specifically Kelsey, she'll be able to help set up some of those fundraising pages if individuals are interested in exploring a fundraising page. This also gives an opportunity to see payments, registration fees, ticket purchases, reports, really being able to engage with your community to see where you're at in terms of your fundraising. And it also gives volunteers an opportunity to share that page with people that they may know who might be interested in supporting that fundraising initiative. Really great, excellent tool. And if you're interested, Kelsey would be happy to share some more details about fundraising pages specifically. And then document sharing platforms. So when we think about tangible documents, long gone are the days of paper, it seems, in our virtual world. So things like Google Drive or Dropbox, these are tools, again, I provide some resources at the end of the presentation to be able to learn a bit more. But this is a place where you're able to share some of that documentation with volunteers or even the general community to learn a bit more about what it is that you're doing and representing. And again, it's easy to go back to review if necessary, things like meeting minutes, registration forms, any of the things that we're wanting to share with our community about best practices. This is a great hub and a resource to be able to utilize. Okay. I did want to talk a bit more about other tools for virtual engagement that may be falling under those categories we just discussed. So oftentimes you'll see some of our chapters do have websites, for instance. That's a great place to be able to share information specifically related to your chapter or your geographical area. Really excellent opportunity to be able to not only share about who your chapter is, but the work that you're doing and allow people to explore that work, whether it be pictures, it could be a poster of an upcoming fundraising initiative, your social media. Really great place to be able to display those things. And then when I think about tools, I think about a hybrid model. So thinking about when you're transitioning back to in-person opportunities, offering potentially a hybrid model within that to be able to still engage with those virtual elements of things and maybe individuals who aren't able to participate in person. Live and pre-recorded content. So much like what I'm doing right now on this presentation, a pre-recorded video allows me to still share information relevant to the cause, but also people may not be able to be in attendance. So having a variation between live presenters as well as pre-recorded options is a great tool. Live polling, the opportunity to connect with your community and really get their feedback. That could be a live poll in an event that you're hosting. It could be a poll that you put out on your Facebook page to gain some feedback. Just thinking about different ways to get that feedback without always relying on a written survey or an online survey. Breakout rooms. So oftentimes our platforms such as Zoom, I'll give that example, offers the opportunity for breakout rooms. So you can split larger groups of people at an event or at a fundraising initiative to be able to talk and have conversation amongst individuals within that breakout room. Really creates a sense of comfort in getting to know individuals. And then, of course, we have our feedback surveys and as well as activities, really taking an opportunity to get to know the community that you're working with, getting their feedback. It's a really excellent way for us to be enhancing what we're doing and recognizing that feedback is an important part of the work we do in our community as well, so that we know what we're doing well, what we could be challenging ourselves to do better the next time. And then newsletters. And I wanted to give an example of the Niagara chapter specifically has shared with us that they do updates for their community around fundraising, initiatives, as well as conference through a newsletter. So this is a great way to connect with your community, give them a quick update. And that could be a variation of, it could be a monthly newsletter, it could be a quarterly newsletter, lots of different options for individuals who might want to share additional information about what's going on in their community. Tips and tricks. So virtual presentations and meetings can sometimes be a little intimidating in the beginning because you're sitting in front of a camera and potentially with people you don't necessarily know. So thinking about some of these things I wanted to highlight to really create a comfortable space, whether that be at an event, a fundraising initiative, an educational opportunity. These can be used in many, many different ways. So always starting with an icebreaker. If I were there in person with you today, chances are I probably would have started with an icebreaker. I like to get people talking, comfortable with myself as well as with the group. So icebreakers are a great way to do that. It can be something as simple as a 3-minute little game that you're doing to get to know people within your audience. Engaging with your camera, really important. As you can see, I like to use my hands. I really like to engage as though I am in person. It gives a sense of comfort to those who are watching, and at times keeps people engaged. I know it can be quite boring at times to sit in front of your computer. So really keeping people engaged to the best of your ability goes a long way. Using a virtual background. So you can be using a virtual background, whether it be a picture, whether it be a logo, something to really spark conversation among the participants that you're working with, whether that be people you know in a chapter meeting, or it could just be a community event that you're giving a speech at. Using that virtual background allows for that conversation to spark. Keeping things short and sweet in your presentation content. Sometimes when you overwhelm a slide with information, it can be a lot for people to digest. So keeping things very simplistic, as you can see, I use bullet points here in this slide. Your talking points, of course, elaborate and give more detail, but short and sweet tends to draw people's eyes to exactly what it is that you're talking about. Visuals, and music. Any ways that you can be engaging people and breaking up that content really, really helps keep people interested and engaged, and using that element of surprise as well. It could just be maybe something that you're sharing with the group that you maybe didn't outline in your agenda at the end, and keeping that element of surprise available. It could be you're giving out a prize that maybe someone didn't know about, or an award at an event that you're doing. And that allows people to a little bit on their toes and really interested and engaged in what's happening. And of course, wrapping things up, ending on a meaningful note, always tying things up with the best of your ability to bring that focus back to what the presentation was solely about. And I'll give an example of that when we get to the end of this presentation. Okay, so ideas to try. I know I talked about those focus areas at the very beginning of our presentation, and I want to tie things back together as we're nearing the end of our presentation. So when you think about things like fundraising, let's talk about that for a second. Fundraising, of course, has many different facets to it. When you think about fundraising, it does have the capacity to be in person as well as virtual. So creating an online fundraising page for an upcoming event is a perfect example of how you're able to raise awareness, engage with your community. And it's really important to be able to acknowledge that those fundraising pages really help reach an audience, and not just your direct contacts, but you're able to share it out on social media. You're able to put it up on your website so that people have a direct link to the fundraising initiatives that you may be doing within your community. I do want to give an example of Manitoba chapter has shared with us a little bit about their national virtual walk. This was an opportunity to run a fundraising event and also reach a broad community. I know that Vern had shared he had much more of an uptake in that audience that he was reaching. And it was much larger than it probably ever would have been in person, because people were able to do that walk on their own time and of course in their own community, but yet still be a part of a larger community while they're doing that. Utilizing registration reports from your online fundraising pages. This helps make big decisions. It could be talking about how you want to be effectively promoting that event. Is the report showing that it's being successful in the way that you are putting it out to your community, or do you maybe need to be adapting some of those elements? And of course, hosting a virtual event using Zoom or any other platform. So we give here the examples of a paint night, a trivia night, thinking outside the box and how you can get people together in a virtual platform to be raising money. So they're still getting that element of an event that is something that may be interesting to them, but they don't have to leave their home necessarily in order to participate. And again, you could be thinking hybrid model for an event as well. Say you wanted to host a paint night, for instance. You might have an instructor who's in a physical space with some of the participants in person, but then you might have participants that are tuning in live as well and able to follow along with that event and still collect funds and be able to fundraise. Okay, so we're going to talk a little about education. So using a webinar function on Zoom or Facebook Live post to host an education forum. This has proven to be a very successful tool. The one that comes to mind is the Toronto chapter. I know that Toronto chapter has done some live posts and they've really got their community engaged, whether that be bringing in a guest speaker to talk about a specific topic area, or just really connecting with your overall community, giving them updates about what your chapter's up to. Of course, connecting with your local social worker at HSC to coordinate educational opportunities. So in each of the provinces, and sometimes and several social workers in provinces such as Ontario, really get to know the social worker in your community because they are an amazing resource, not only to families, but also to our volunteers. Really being able to provide some education and opportunities to be able to collaborate on some of those opportunities that you're giving in the community. Inviting guest speakers to participate. Guest speakers are always a great way to spice up your presentation. Really maybe collecting some information from your community about what it is that they want to see in terms of education. And once you have that information, you can then be seeking out some of those guest speakers who might be able to bring some context to those topic areas and really engage the community. And now we've got informal community support. So informal community support can be pretty much anything that allows a group of people to feel connected and supported. So we did want to give some virtual elements of this. If you're not able to meet in person, how can you be connecting with your community? So offering a chat group option on social media, so something like Facebook, you could be staying connected in a group chat with people that may be in your chapter. It may be a close group of friends that are working on something with you. Really great to be able to connect. Hosting a regular virtual tea and talk, a book club or a games night to offer some of that ongoing engagement. These are just some ideas. This could really go whatever way a chapter or group of people are wanting to host that opportunity. You may have a common interest of a book that you're wanting to read. Really just staying connected to your community really helps with that isolation that we've all been feeling over the last couple of years. Especially in this community, it's a difficult time, and being able to connect with friends, colleagues in any way, shape, or form can really boost people's spirits. Providing live polling or survey options further to engage with your HD community. So providing those live poll and survey options allows for you to get that feedback like we were talking about, and really, again, engaging in conversation around community support. Awareness and advocacy. So awareness, when you think about generating a social media post to raise awareness around HD and reach a broad audience of people. So that social media post not only is going to reach the people you directly know, but it could be reaching people to your broader audience and bringing awareness to HD in a way. Think about Light It Up for HD, for instance. That's a great annual campaign that we're doing in different communities across Canada that allows people to not only build awareness, but visually offer picture opportunities and ways to be engaging the larger community. Creating a platform, creating an online awareness challenge. So this could be videos, pictures that encourage community to participate. You could have one that comes to mind is not only Light It Up for HD, but Chalk It Up for HD was an initiative that happened in the past where people were using sidewalk chalk around their neighborhoods to really raise awareness around HD, especially May Awareness Month. And really engaging people of all ages. It could be children, adults, seniors, really getting people out there and engaged in their community in something fun and artistic. And of course, participating in annual campaigns such as Light It Up for HD, flag raisings, proclamations. These are things that are happening in communities across Canada. And we want you to know that at National Office, we're here to support you in any awareness events that may come to mind, or maybe an idea that you want to flush out to be able to run in your community. We are always all ears with awareness and advocacy, and we really encourage volunteers to be reaching out to our National Office and chapter development team to be fleshing some of those things out and brainstorming together. And then we've got our free resource section. So I know that was a lot of information to digest, and I didn't want to overwhelm people too much with these resources, but I did want to provide you an opportunity to view these things on your own time. So as you can see, we've got a few different icons here. We've got our Facebook icon, we've got a Dropbox icon, Zoom, as well as Google Workspace. So if you hover over, I will be sharing a copy of this presentation in a PDF form. And if you hover over each of these icons, you're able to click on it and it will bring you up more information on their website. And a lot of them have great resources and learning modules to be able to utilize these tools if you've never experienced them. And of course, at Chapter Development Team at HSC is always here to support you. If there is something that you're needing extra support in, or you'd like to explore a bit more with one of our staff members, you can always feel free to reach out to us. And our contact information, again, is on that first page of the slideshow, which will also be in the presentation. Okay, so feel free to explore these things and really get a better idea and a handle on what they're capable of doing, and whether or not your chapter or your community group is using these things already, how you're able to utilize them in a way that's community engagement related, specifically around the HD community. Okay, so I want to open it up to questions. And of course, like I mentioned previously, Annie is going to provide now a live Q&A for anybody watching this presentation. Annie is an amazing resource. She has been at HSC for quite some time now and will be a great person to chat with about some of these things that we brought up in this presentation. Any questions, ideas, Annie's your person to go to. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm really, really excited to dive in a bit more about community engagement in a virtual capacity if anybody has questions. So you have my contact info. Hope you're enjoying the conference this weekend, and we are sending positive vibes your way and looking forward to catching up soon. Thank you again. Have a great day.
All right, there we are. Thank you so much to Megan for that wonderful presentation. And I thank you all again as well for being here. As Megan mentioned, we do have some time now for Q&A. So just a reminder that you can pop those questions into the questions tab. You'll find that in the menu on the right-hand side of your screen. If you'd just like to chat with us, by all means, fire that into the chat box as well. But I am happy to help you with questions. Please also note that Megan mentioned that she was going to share the presentation. I have put in the chat, but in case you can't see it, you can find the presentation in the files tab there as well. And you should be able to see the file thing. Wow, I'm doing a really good job describing that with the arrow that you can download the presentation if you would like a copy of that in order to click on those links that she had available. So with that said, I'm going to move into our questions. I've got a couple here that I'd like to do first. So the first one that I see coming in at this point is, where do I start if there is no chapter in my area? And I know, Lori, actually, you were talking about the fact that you're looking at possibly forming a chapter in Northern BC, which is fantastic. So there are a couple of steps involved in getting a chapter started. What I think is really important to recognize recognize right now is, given the world that we're in with all of the virtual tools available to us, it really does create a lot of opportunities in terms of reducing boundaries and barriers to participate in chapters. So while there may be a chapter in a particular community, I think what's really neat to see right now for all of us is people participating in those chapters from other places that are nowhere near it. I know, for instance, we have a couple of chapters in Ontario where there are folks several hours away from the chapter that are participating virtually in the meetings and helping to plan activities and events through the virtual tools available to them. So that would be my first point, is just to recognize that if there is no chapter in your immediate area, it doesn't mean that there isn't a group of like-minded individuals waiting for you to join them. Now, that said, if you'd like to see about starting something in your community, first step is really to reach out to myself or Megan and ask a couple of questions. We tend to suggest running a bit of an educational event where you can have a presenter and encourage people to come out and see what the interest is in the community. Once we have that idea of who might be interested in seeing a chapter there as well, then we can start building a bit of a calendar of activity so that we can move towards the actual request for chapter status, which comes about 2 years after the activity has been established. So it does take a little bit of time. But it is a really great process, and we're so lucky to have the chapters that we do have across the country. Now, I do see a question from Lori about a tool to assess the viability of a new chapter. I'm not sure whether that question actually answers that for you, Lori, but in terms of assessing the viability, really that's where we would, start a group and see what we can build from there, running that information session to see whether there's an interest in the community, that sort of thing. So let's see here. Yes, creating the invitation list is important, Lori. That's exactly right. Okay, Joe says, I'm just the vice chair, but I don't think anyone at the chapter has emails of our little group. Is this because it's confidential information? We were just building our chapter when COVID hit. It feels like a fledgling that fell out of the nest and then a giant storm hit. Oh, Joe, you're so right. And I'm so sorry to hear it. But yeah, absolutely. For the chapters themselves, if you have folks in your chapter, you're collecting those emails, those do belong to the chapter. So within HSC, we actually have sort of 3 pools of communication lists. We have the chapter mailing list, we have HSC's mailing list, and then we also have the social workers and their client list. So depending on who's in your area and what their comfort level is, if there's an event or activity that your chapter is doing, or your group, if you're not officially a chapter yet, you can potentially ask the social worker to forward the information to their list. Now, in terms of the confidentiality piece that you're asking about here, Joe, the confidentiality is solely as it pertains to HSC's list or the client list. The list that is for the chapter with the chapter emails is certainly your list, and you have access to that. So in terms of where those emails may be, connect with me afterwards and we can see if we can find out what happened with that. I'm sure part of it was the timing of the pandemic and everything that went on for Barrie. So we'll figure that one out for you, absolutely. I'm just going to backtrack here because I see another comment from Lori just regards to the viability question. Lori's just asking whether there are any statistics that we can use regarding how many people with HD live in our area. It is a tricky question for us to answer that, but it is something we can sometimes find out through the social worker. But overall, we have challenges in assessing the exact numbers in an area. But again, we can kind of check in with the social worker, see what we can find out and see if that helps to provide a little bit more of an understanding of whether there would be any folks connected in the area that would benefit from a chapter as well, even if they don't necessarily come out to any events. All right, I've got a private question coming in here that is asking about how to get people to join our virtual meetings. So this sounds like a chapter that has been doing some great work getting their chapter meeting through the pandemic, but not having much of an uptake on it, which is absolutely normal. So some of the tips that I would suggest, first of all, making sure you have a clear agenda. People need to know what it is that they're coming out and participating in. So it's important to put out there ahead of time what you're going to be talking about, which leads me to another point that I will bring up in just a moment. But this kind of plays into the what's in it for me kind of mentality that we have in society. So folks need to know what they're getting into when they go to any event, not just chapter meetings or group meetings. So making sure that you provide that to them, and recognizing too that sometimes what might be valuable to you from a meeting perspective might not be valuable to the people that you're hoping will come out. So making sure that you provide that extra value add, whatever it may be. One of the things that Megan mentioned in her presentation that has been successful for a few of our groups is having guest speakers. So it doesn't need to be formatted specifically as an educational event. It could just be a meeting. It could be an AGM for your chapter, in fact. But having someone come out to present on a topic that's relevant to the community could encourage people to come out and stick around to talk a little bit of shop afterwards. I think another thing that we have to be aware of is that not everyone is comfortable being on camera. Certainly having our cameras on and being able to connect in that way is so, so important when we're feeling disconnected and isolated during the pandemic, but not everyone is comfortable with it. So I think it's important when you put out an invitation for a meeting that if it's okay for folks to have their cameras off, you let them know in that email or the invitation that they have the option to turn their camera off and just view the meeting and use chat or audio only to participate. I think it's also important recognizing that we're all at different levels of technological abilities to provide a resource whenever you send out an invitation with how to join the meeting, what the basics are for getting in, whether that be a document that you create with our team that you have access to through work or something that you have engaged with Zoom or other type of tools on, or if it's even just a link directly from the platform that you're using. They often have really easy to understand short videos that walk you through how their system works. And I think that's really helpful as well. The only other piece that I would give related to joining your virtual meetings is just being considerate of time. Certainly in a virtual setting, we have a lot more flexibility. We don't have to necessarily worry about childcare or looking after a loved one that we otherwise may have needed to leave at home to go out to a meeting in person. But there is still an element of consideration in terms of time. So my best suggestion would be to connect with the folks, again, that you're hoping will be at your meetings and see if there's any challenges or accommodations around time that they may need you to be considering. And you can do this through really easy poll programs online as well. Even if your group or your chapter has a Facebook page, oftentimes there's a Facebook poll feature right there that you could use, that you could put out to the entire group, just confirming that the time of the meeting is going to be conducive for everyone. I just saw in chat, Lori, if you're still with us, Gloria has mentioned that she wants to establish a chapter in Northern BC in Prince George. So it sounds like we've already got a chapter up and running from today. Look at that. I love it. Okay. So, and Lori, I do see your question with regards to social worker. So I believe for your region, you would be connecting with Rhonda Romalock for BC. She's our BC Resource Center Director. But I can double check that for you. So when you connect with Megan or I after the conference, we can confirm if there is someone else that you should be connecting with. So moving right along, I've got probably some time for one more question. I was just looking at our questions list and see we're already down to the final 2 minutes. So I'm going to address one more question here. Oh boy, more popping in. You guys are just so great. I'm loving this. Let me just read and pick one. Sorry, guys. Okay, so I'm going to go with this question about, sorry, my mind just froze, about do the chapters ever connect to learn and share? So absolutely, our chapters have had many opportunities to connect and grow with each other over the years. A few things have been on hiatus because our team was a little bit different over the past year, but we are getting things reestablished as I come back into the workplace and Megan joins our team. So we're going to be getting a few of the connection opportunities back up and running in the next month or so as conference hits our rear view mirror, so to speak. So in the past, these have been Zoom calls, whether for event organizers or chapter leads. Sometimes we have training sessions on things to do around your events. Sometimes it's connections about volunteer engagement. We're also working on a couple of tools and resources through various other online tools. In the past, we've had a Dropbox where we share files and materials, manuals, and various documentation. So those will be back up and running in the next little bit as well. And I encourage everyone to participate in that. But we are now at time. It is 12:45, and I'm conscious of the fact that our next sessions are starting. So I want to thank you all so much for being such a wonderfully engaged audience. I know we were a small group, but these questions have been amazing, and I'm so grateful that you all are here. It's always so wonderful to connect with all of you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day today and enjoy the next sessions, and I will see you around. And again, please reach out if you have any questions that we weren't able to address today. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.